正如剛才提到，特朗普提名小羅拔甘迺迪成為今屆政府嘅衛生部長，因為喺美國唯有佢具備背景、能力、膽識同政治影響力，能以一人之力對抗整個醫藥利益集團。小羅拔甘迺迪現年71歲，出身美國政治名聲顯赫嘅世家。作為甘迺迪家族成員之一，佢嘅伯父係第35任總統約翰甘迺迪，父親羅拔甘迺迪曾任司法部長。哥哥約翰甘迺迪喺1963年遇刺身亡之後，1968年羅拔甘迺迪參與民主黨初選，當時以大比數領先，有機會勝出黨內選舉，但同年被刺身亡。小羅拔甘迺迪作為家族裏僅存嘅政治人物，佢深明政治嘅黑暗，喺龐大嘅利益集團面前，膽敢動別人嘅奶酪，隨時性命不保。佢嘅父親、伯父就係最好嘅例子。再者，提名佢做衛生部長嘅特朗普，亦曾經遇刺，只係行動以失敗告終。佢深知向醫藥利益集團宣戰，如同捅破馬蜂窩，即使佢出身重量級政治世家，亦會招致殺身之禍。然而，點解佢明知呢條路近乎係一條必死之路，佢仍然願意擺上呢？明顯佢就係聖經提及好撒瑪利亞人嘅故事。一個富家弟子大半生享盡榮華富貴，卻目睹大量美國人嘅健康被醫藥利益集團所奪去，一生受慢性病折磨，所有財富都用於供養呢啲集團。甚至每個美國嬰兒一出生就接種大量疫苗，因而患上唔同疾病，一生受盡疾病折磨，成為醫藥利益集團獲取龐大醫藥費嘅工具，成為佢哋嘅養分。呢個就係美國現時可怕嘅光景。小羅拔甘迺迪就係唔忍心嘅好撒瑪利亞人，縱使自己並非當中嘅受害者，卻願意付上性命嘅代價去抗衡。佢亦絕對知道好撒瑪利亞人嘅故事，因為佢父親中槍之後，正係被送到好撒瑪利亞人醫院搶救。佢因為目睹父親被刺殺離世，長大後染上毒癮，16歲就因吸毒被捕，直到10多年後，29歲先至成功戒毒。曾經沉淪毒海多年，佢深知疾病之苦。後嚟佢擔任律師工作，官司內容都與環境保護以及反疫苗有關。以下係小羅拔甘迺迪嘅專訪內容。
There is nothing more profitable in our society today than a sick child, because all of these entities are making money on them. The insurance companies, the hospitals, the medical cartel, the pharmaceutical companies have lifetime annuities, and the earlier that kid is sick, they don't want to kill him. They want them sick for the rest of their lives. And we have now a whole generation. When my uncle was president, 6% of Americans had chronic disease. Today it's 60%. When my uncle was president, do you know what the annual cost of treating chronic disease was in this country? 0. There weren't even any drugs invented for it. 0. Today it's about $4.3 trillion.
When your uncle was president...
And none of it is necessary.
What was the autism rate in 1960? Do we know?
In 1960, the autism rate, there's about 4 or 5 studies, and the highest rate, say about 1 in 2,500, 1 in 1,500, 1 in 2,500, 1 in 10,000. So that, it was somewhere between 1 in 1,500 and 1 in 10,000. Today, it's 1 in every 34 kids, according to CDC, and in some states, like California, I think maybe Utah and New Jersey, 1 in 22. 1 in 22 kids. And, these kids should be healthy. These kids should be our highest performing kids. And they instead are have this extraordinary disability that's going to keep them dependent. If you're full-blown autism, it's a non-verbal, non-toilet trained, head banging, stimming, toe walking. These are kids that will never throw a baseball. They'll never graduate high school. They'll never go out and take a girl on a date. They'll never use the toilet alone. They'll never write a play. They'll never write a poem. They'll never vote.
Never have children.
Never pay taxes.
So that just seems like such an emergency.
And for me, if I could save one of these kids, it would be worth giving my life for it. I'm 70 years old. To save one kid at birth, it would be worth dying for. And to the opportunity and the need for me to save all of these kids, I would do anything for.
片段裡面提到，佢目睹美國人幾十年嚟喪失健康嘅過程，佢嘅至親亦死於暗殺。從佢口中講出呢句話，我願意用自己嘅性命去換取一個美國嬰孩嘅健康。佢絕對明白呢句話嘅真正意思同代價。因此，特朗普作為共和黨總統，卻提名民主黨背景嘅小羅拔甘迺迪為衛生部長。一如所料，特朗普嘅提名就好似揭開潘多拉盒子，引起極大反彈。因為假如小羅拔甘迺迪嘅提名成功通過嘅話，對醫藥利益集團而言必定係沉重打擊。尤其係佢哋知道特朗普亦係反疫苗，意味住特朗普上台之後，所有人都有被清算嘅可能。於是佢哋立即作出部署，首先安排拜登卸任前簽署法令，史無前例咁預防式特赦抗疫要員福奇，即新冠肺炎大流行期間執掌抗疫實權嘅首席醫療顧問福奇，讓佢免於被特朗普追究。大家可以想象，假如新冠疫苗真係好似福奇所講，係非常安全，可以讓所有美國人不斷接種嘅話，咁樣佢又何罪之有呢？既然冇犯罪，唔會罪成，拜登又何須給予預防式特赦呢？再者，大家亦可以諗諗，一個小小嘅衛生官員能夠讓總統作出如此破格嘅舉動，令自己嘅總統生涯留下污點嗎？定係福奇呢個人對於龐大嘅醫藥利益集團非常重要，一旦佢被捕或被盤問，將會對佢哋產生重大影響。
Joe Biden is being blasted today after his final act as president granted preemptive pardons to allies and family members who have not been criminally convicted. Joe Biden issued sweeping pardons to his entire family, as well as Anthony Fauci, Liz Cheney, retired General Mark Milley, and January 6 committee members. The preemptive pardons are not a good look for Joe Biden, his family, and everyone he has pardoned, with many suggesting if you've done nothing wrong, you shouldn't need to be pardoned. Donald Trump Jr. reiterated this on X, saying he doesn't have to accept the pardon. If he did nothing wrong, be a man and turn it down. But you know he won't, because everyone knows he's guilty of so much. US Senator Rand Paul agrees, saying if there was ever any doubt as to who bears responsibility for the COVID pandemic, Biden's pardon of Fauci forever seals the deal. As chairman of the Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee, I will not rest until the entire truth of the cover-up is exposed. Fauci's pardon will only serve as an accelerant to pierce the veil of deception. Ignoramus. Anthony Fauci will go down in history as the first government scientist to be preemptively pardoned for a crime. Sky News host James Morrow has also come out today blasting Biden for the pardons, saying they are a great admission of wrongdoing.
I want to get your thoughts on this final act from President Biden, which is to issue all these pardons. Fauci, Milley, J6, family members. I mean, he's throwing them everywhere. Like,
okay, so this is, you had that moment in the speech when Donald Trump was there and he had Joe Biden off to his side there and he was talking about this corrupt system while Joe Biden had to just sit there. And boy, that was such an indictment of what Joe Biden, or rather the people handling Joe Biden, had just done. These pardons are like nothing else I've ever seen. 4 years ago, Joe Biden said that that there would be no preemptive pardons for anybody in his family or in his administration or anything like that. For years, Democrats have said that if you accept a pardon, that means you're guilty. And they were saying that in reference to the J6 people who are going to be pardoned possibly at the Capital One Arena just in a few moments' time. But what this is here, this is not just an admission, I think, that there is real stuff to be covered here, whether it is with Fauci and his use of Chinese labs to subvert gain-of-function research restrictions in the United States going back to 2014, whether it is about influence corruption and buying of influence by other members of the Biden family, and we know that's been detailed by people like Miranda Devine in her books, our colleague at the New York Post, or people on the J6 committee who there is evidence tampered with witness statements and things like that.
特朗普嘅回應係刻意撤走保護福奇嘅特工，稱福奇賺咗好多錢，可以自己僱用保安。
Security detail for Anthony Fauci was terminated last night, sir. Do you have a comment?
No, I think, when you work for government, at some point your security detail comes off. And, you can't have them forever. They all made a lot of money. They can hire their own security, too. All the people you're talking about, they can go out. I can give them some good numbers of very good security people. They can hire their own security. They all made a lot of money. Fauci made a lot of money. They all did. So if they, felt that strongly, I think that certainly I would not take responsibility.
醫藥利益集團除咗保護福奇之外，下一步就係全力阻止小羅拔甘迺迪嘅提名。2024年12月9日嘅新聞報導，77名諾貝爾獎得主聯署反對小羅拔甘迺迪擔任美國衛生部長。如之前提及，學者們得到諾貝爾獎，正因為背後有龐大財團支持。當面對外敵嘅時候，諾貝爾獎得主就要為呢啲財團發聲，企出嚟表態，試圖影響美國公眾，將小羅拔甘迺迪打造成腦袋有問題嘅陰謀論者。2025年1月29日嘅提名聽證會中，火花四濺，小羅拔甘迺迪反疫苗嘅立場，令佢成為眾矢之的，被眾人攻擊。而問答環節之前，小羅拔甘迺迪講出佢嘅願景，就係讓美國人再次健康起嚟。
Chairman Crapo, Ranking Member Wyden, and members of this distinguished committee, I'm humbled to be sitting here today as President Trump's nominee to oversee the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. I want to thank President Trump for entrusting me to deliver on his promise to make America healthy again. I also want to thank Cheryl and Kik and Bobby and all of my other children who are here today, and all the many members of my large extended family for the love that they have so generously shared. Ours has always been a family that has been involved in public service, and I look forward to continuing that tradition. My journey into the issue of health began with my career as an environmental attorney, working with hunters and fishermen and mothers in the small town in the Hudson Valley and along the Hudson River. I learned very early on that human health and environmental injuries are intertwined. The same chemicals that kill fish make people sick also. Today, Americans' overall health is in grievous condition. Over 70% of adults and a third of children are overweight or obese. Diabetes is 10 times more prevalent than it was during the 1960s. Cancer among young people is rising by 1 or 2% a year. Autoimmune diseases, neurodevelopmental disorders, Alzheimer's, asthma, ADHD, depression, addiction, and a host of other physical and mental health conditions are all on the rise, some of them exponentially. The United States has worse health than any other developed nation, yet we spend more on healthcare, at least double, and in some cases triple, as other countries. Last year, we spent $4.8 trillion, not counting the indirect costs of missed work. That's almost a fifth of GDP. It's tantamount to a 20% tax on the entire economy. No wonder America has trouble competing with countries that pay a third of what we do for health and have better outcomes and a healthier workforce. But I don't want to make this too much about money. It's the human tragedy that moves us to care. President Trump has promised to restore America's global strength and to restore the American dream, but he understands we can't be a strong nation when our people are so sick. A healthy person has 1,000 dreams. A sick person has only one.
小羅拔甘迺迪指出，當人生病嘅時候，任何夢想都會幻滅。嗰個人只會有一個夢想，就係希望自己能夠康復。正如佢嘅專訪所講，疫苗就係令美國嬰兒從小患病嘅根源。而特朗普嘅計劃就係調查兒童疫苗，
Let me ask you about RFK Jr. He has obviously talked about his skepticism of vaccines. He's expressed opposition to childhood vaccines. Do you want to see childhood vaccines eliminated?
If they're dangerous for the children. Look.
So possibly?
When you look at some of the problems, when you look at what's going on with disease and sickness in our country, something's wrong.
Are you talking about autism?
Well, if you take a look at autism, you go back 25 years, autism was almost non-existent. It was, 1 out of 100,000, and now it's close to 1 out of 100.
Well,
I mean, what's happening?
然而聽證會中，小羅拔甘迺迪反疫苗嘅立場，令佢不斷被攻擊。
Mr. Kennedy, you have spent years pushing conflicting stories about vaccines. You say one thing, and then you say another. In your testimony today under oath, you denied that you were anti-vaccine. But during a podcast interview in July of 2023, you said, quote, "No vaccine is safe and effective." In your testimony today, in order to prove you're not anti-vax, you note that all your kids are vaccinated. But in a podcast in 2020, you said, and I quote, "You would do anything, pay anything to go back in time and not vaccinate your kids." Mr. Kennedy, all of these things cannot be true. So, are you lying to Congress today when you say you are pro-vaccine? Or did you lie on all those podcasts? We have all of this on tape, by the way.
Yeah, Senator, as you know, because it's been repeatedly debunked, that statement that I made on the Lex Friedman podcast was a fragment of the statement. He asked me, and anybody who actually goes and looks at that podcast and will see this. He asked me, are there vaccines that are safe and effective? And I said to him, some of the live virus vaccines are. And I said, there are no vaccines that are safe and effective, and I was going to continue for every person. Every medicine has people who are sensitive to them, including vaccines.
Right, so
he interrupted me at that point. I've corrected it many times, including on national TV. You know about this, Senator Wyden, so bringing this up right now is dishonest.
Let's be clear about what you've actually done then, since you want to deny your statements. For example, you have a history of trying to take vaccines away from people. In May of 2021, you petitioned the Food and Drug Administration to not only block Americans from having access to the COVID vaccine, but to prevent any future access to the life-saving vaccine. Are you denying that? Your name is on the petition.
We brought that petition after CDC recommended the COVID vaccine without any scientific basis for 6-year-old children. Most experts agree today, even the people who did it back then, that COVID vaccines are inappropriate for 6-year-old children who basically have a zero risk from COVID. That's why I brought that lawsuit.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The question before the Finance Committee this morning is whether Robert F. Kennedy should be trusted with the health and well-being of the American people. Committee staff have examined thousands of pages of statements, books, and podcast transcripts in a review of his record. The receipts show that Mr. Kennedy has embraced conspiracy theories, quacks, charlatans, especially when it comes to the safety and efficacy of vaccines. He has made it his life's work to sow doubt and discourage parents from getting their kids life-saving vaccines. It has been lucrative for him and put him on the verge of immense power. This is the profile of someone who chases money and influence wherever they lead, even if that may mean the tragic deaths of children and other vulnerable people. Now, Mr. Kennedy is fond of saying he's not making recommendations. about whether parents should vaccinate their children. He's just asking questions and giving people choices. It's a slippery tactic to dodge any real responsibility for his words and actions. And it is, in my view, absurd coming from somebody who's trying to win confirmation for a job.
聽證會之後，大量網民湧入參議員 Ron Wyden 嘅 X 平台留言責罵，因為喺佢嘅議員生涯中，單嚟自醫藥公司嘅捐款就已經超過150萬美元。人們一面倒咁樣指控佢，包括貪污、偽君子、廣告由藥業公司提供，讓人見識到藥業公司說客嘅威力，行為令選民蒙羞等等。另一位收受醫藥公司捐款超過120萬美元嘅參議員係 Elizabeth Warren， 同樣佢亦係攻擊小羅拔甘迺迪嘅主攻手。
Senator Warren.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Mr. Kennedy, I want to start with something that I think you and I agree on, and that is that Big Pharma has too much power in Washington. You've said that President Trump asked you to, quote, clean up corruption and conflicts. Sounds great. You've said that you will, quote, slam shut the revolving door between government agencies and the companies they regulate. That also sounds great. So here's an easy question. Will you commit that when you leave this job, you will not accept compensation from a drug company, a medical device company, a hospital system, or a health insurer for at least 4 years, including as a lobbyist or a board member?
Can you just repeat the last part of the question? Can I commit
You're
to
not going to take money from drug companies in any way, shape, or form.
Who? Me?
Yes, you.
Oh. Yeah, I'm happy to commit to that.
Okay, good. That's what I figured. I said it's an easy question to start with. And I think you're right on this question.
I don't think any of them want to give me money, by the way.
Let's keep going. You're right because to say yes, because every American has the right to know that every decision you make as our number one health officer is to help them and not to make money for yourself in the future. So I want to talk more about money. I'm looking at your paperwork right now. In the past 2 years, you've raked in $2.5 million from a law firm called Wisner Baum. You go online, you do commercials to encourage people to sign up with Wisner Baum to join lawsuits against vaccine makers. And for everyone who signs up, you personally get paid. And if they win their case, you get 10% of what they win. So if you bring in somebody who gets $10 million, you walk away with $1 million. Now, you just said that you want the American people to know you can't be bought. Your decisions won't depend on how much money you could make in the future. You won't go to work for a drug company after you leave HHS. But you and I both know there's another way to make money. So, Mr. Kennedy, will you also agree that you won't take any compensation from any lawsuits against drug companies while you are secretary and for 4 years afterwards?
Well, I'll certainly commit to that while I'm secretary. But I do want to clarify something because you're making me sound like a shill. I put together that case. I did the Science Day presentation to the judge on that case to get it into court.
Mr. Kennedy, it's just a really simple question.
Yeah,
You've taken in $2.5 million. I want to know if you will commit right now that not only will you not go to work for drug companies, you won't go to work suing the drug companies and taking your rake out of that while you're secretary and for 4 years after. It's just...
I'll commit to not taking any fees from drug companies while I'm secretary.
No, I'm asking about fees from suing drug companies. Will you agree not to do that?
You're asking me to not sue drug companies, and I'm not going to agree to that,
Senator. Drug companies as much as you want.
I'm not going to agree to not sue drug companies or anybody.
So let's do a quick count here of how, as Secretary of HHS, if you get confirmed, you could influence every one of those lawsuits. Well, let me start the list. You could publish your anti-vaccine conspiracies, but this time on U.S. government letterhead, something a jury might be impressed by. You could appoint people to the CDC vaccine panel who share your anti-vax views and let them do your dirty work. You could tell the CDC vaccine panel to remove a particular vaccine from the vaccine schedule. You could remove vaccines from special compensation programs, which would open up manufacturers to mass torts. You could make more injuries eligible for compensation even if there is no causal evidence. You could change vaccine court processes to make it easier to bring junk lawsuits. You could turn over FDA data to your friends at the law firm and they could use it however it benefited them. You could change vaccine labeling. You could change vaccine information rules. You could change which claims are compensated in the vaccine injury compensation program. There's a lot of ways that you can influence those future lawsuits and pending lawsuits while you are Secretary of HHS, and I'm asking you to commit right now that you will not take a financial stake in every one of those lawsuits so that what you do as Secretary will also benefit you financially down the line.
I'll comply with all the ethical guidelines.
That's not the question. You have said
you're asking me, Senator, you're asking me not to sue vaccine pharmaceutical companies. Yeah, you are. That's exactly what you're doing.
No. Look, no one should be fooled here. As Secretary of HHS, Robert Kennedy will have the power to undercut vaccines and vaccine manufacturing across our country. And for all of his talk about follow the science and his promise that he won't interfere with those of us who want to vaccinate his kids, the bottom line is the same. Kennedy can kill off access to vaccines and make millions of dollars while he does it. Kids might die, but Robert Kennedy can keep cashing in.
Senator, I support vaccines. I support the childhood schedule. I will do that. The only thing I want is good science, and that's it.
How about then say you won't make money off what you do as Secretary of HHS?
Before we go to Senator Tillis, I think it would be important for me to make it very clear that Mr. Kennedy has gone through the same Office of Government Ethics process as every single other nominee in the Finance Committee this year and in previous administrations. In addition to listing his assets, including the items that you've identified, he has signed an ethics letter that has been reviewed by the Office of Government Ethics concerning any possible conflict in light of its functions and the nominee's proposed duties. And we have a letter from the Office of Government Ethics that he hasn't complied completely with all applicable laws and regulations governing conflicts of interest.
Mr. Chairman, point of information here. Have we had a single nominee come through who's made $2.5 million off suing one of the entities that it would be regulating and plans to keep getting a take of every lawsuit in the future? Have we had that before?
I haven't reviewed the past documentation of every other nominee's financial interests, and so no. But I know that every single time we get a nominee, their financial interests are attacked. That's why we have the Office of Government Ethics. That's why they've reviewed everything that's in his record, and that's why he has even, I think, and I don't know that I want to ask him to get into it, but he has listed his assets and has gone through a discussion of the responsibilities under our ethics laws and is complied with all of those requirements.
片段中 Elizabeth Warren 並非質詢，而係照讀醫藥公司嘅廣告，目的就係將小羅拔甘迺迪塑造成一個為咗賺錢不惜犧牲無辜兒童性命嘅人。但美國人顯然已經唔再信任呢啲參議員，因為好多美國家庭已深受疫苗禍害。因此 YouTube 留言中，大多數人指責佢收受醫藥公司捐款，批評佢係偽君子、講大話等等。留言亦都為小羅拔甘迺迪辯護，因為控告藥廠勝訴而收取嘅律師費並唔代表佢貪污，相反，收受醫藥公司捐款，成為佢哋嘅打手，背離美國人民嘅利益， 呢個先係貪污。同樣，聽證會之後，人們湧入佢嘅 X 平台，對佢口誅筆伐。顯然，美國人民已經厭倦為大財團服務嘅政客，佢哋唔單止為大財團護航，更重要嘅係協助醫藥集團繼續殘害美國人嘅生命。喺呢度，我哋可以睇到一個好撒瑪利亞人所面對嘅困境，以及佢點樣被既得利益者迫害。即使小羅拔甘迺迪同埋特朗普能夠成功力挽狂瀾，全面審視疫苗嘅安全性，甚或停止疫苗接種，都只算係亡羊補牢。因為而家嘅吹角對於已經接種疫苗嘅人嚟講已經係太遲，好多人已經因為疫苗而死，而剩低落嚟嘅人傷害亦已經造成，佢哋再無法返到接種疫苗之前。然而，錫安早喺29年前已經吹角，唔單止弟兄姊妹於呢幾十年間得着保守，甚至佢哋下一代嘅小獅子都可以作出正確嘅選擇。除咗疫苗，錫安於呢幾十年間分享咗各式各樣嘅健康資訊，呢啲資訊同樣係 Oracle 級數嘅訊息，讓弟兄姊妹喺呢幾十年間有住健康嘅身體，於人生中有更多嘅可能性，可以完成更多夢想。即使係呢啲年間離世嘅弟兄姊妹，其實亦係因住過往嘅健康訊息延長咗壽命，呢個先至係一個真正嘅好撒瑪利亞人會為別人做嘅事。然而，我哋環顧香港其他教會，係咪有人願意成為好撒瑪利亞人，為陌生人捨命呢？答案當然係冇。佢哋甚至冇達到小羅拔甘迺迪嘅程度。顯然，上星期伊桑新歌 ZNSE 1832 A Drop of Kindness 講述好撒瑪利亞人嘅故事，其實亦係 Walking Oracle 指向小羅拔甘迺迪。原因 A Drop of Kindness 一曲題材選自發生於錫安裏面嘅好撒瑪利亞人嘅故事。填詞方面，早於2023年12月開始，2024年5月完成，其後一直排期至2024年11月先至開始預備編曲。到咗2024年12月開始製作 MV， 包括訪問 MV 裏面嘅幾位主人翁，再加上後期製作，最終到2025年1月26日先至正式首播。由填詞到播出，經歷咗1年多嘅時間，因此絕對係神一日冇偏差嘅帶領。並且遇上小羅拔甘迺迪嘅聽證會，證明 A Drop of Kindness 一曲好撒瑪利亞人嘅題目絕對係 Oracle 級數，係神所欣賞，並且世界係絕對圍繞錫安而轉動。因為當首播之後，全美國嘅聚焦點唔再係加州大火，而係小羅拔甘迺迪出席衛生部長提名聽證會。連續2日嘅聽證會讓佢成為咗全美國嘅焦點，甚至乎聽證會之後，大量美國人湧到佢 X 平台嘅社交媒體鼓勵佢，讓所有美國人見證一個神以伊桑作為 Walking Oracle 認可好撒瑪利亞人嘅例子。再者，小羅拔甘迺迪嘅父親羅拔甘迺迪被槍傷，亦係被送到好撒瑪利亞人醫院搶救，呢個亦係一個共同訊息。其實以佢嘅家境同埋年紀，大可不必接受特朗普嘅提名，擔任衛生部長一職，亦就無需於聽證會被參議員圍攻，更無需冒往後被暗殺嘅風險。然而，當佢睇到一代又一代嘅美國人被醫藥利益集團如同強盜一樣搶劫佢哋嘅金錢，又打傷佢哋，摧毀佢哋嘅健康嘅時候，一個好撒瑪利亞人就會挺身而出，救助同埋醫治呢啲受傷嘅人。
We have massive health problems in our country that we must face honestly. And the first thing I've done every morning for the past 20 years is to pray to God that He would put me in a position where I can end the chronic disease epidemic and protect our children. That's why I'm so grateful to President Trump for the opportunity to sit here before you today and seek your support and your partnership in this endeavor. I'll conclude with a promise to you, Mr. Chairman, the members of this committee, to the President, and most of all to the tens of millions of parents across America, especially the moms, who have propelled this issue to center stage. Should I be so privileged as to be confirmed, We will make sure our tax dollars support healthy foods. We will scrutinize the chemical additives to our food supply. We'll remove the financial conflicts of interest from the agencies. We'll create an honest, unbiased, science-driven HHS, accountable to the President, to the Congress, and to the American people. We will reverse the chronic disease epidemic and put the nation back on the road to good health. Thank you.